Imagine standing on a mountain trail thousands of years ago. No cars, no carts, no horses pulling wagons, not even the widespread use of the wheel. And yet, stretching across valleys, deserts, forests, and mountains was a road network so vast that it connected entire civilizations. Stone-paved paths, suspension bridges hanging over terrifying cliffs, highways cutting through mountains, and travelers moving across continents using nothing but their feet and animals like llamas. But here's the mystery. How did ancient civilizations build massive road systems before the wheel was widely used? Who planned them? How were they maintained? And why were they built on such an enormous scale? Stay with me until the end, because the story of these ancient roads will reveal one of the most astonishing engineering achievements in human history. And if you enjoy discovering forgotten secrets of ancient civilizations, make sure to subscribe and stay with this channel as we uncover the mysteries hidden beneath the paths of the ancient world. Because the story begins high in the mountains of Andes Mountains. Thousands of years ago, long before European explorers ever arrived in the Americas, a powerful civilization began building one of the most extraordinary transportation networks ever created. The empire was known as the Inca Empire, and their road system was nothing short of astonishing. The network stretched more than 40,000 kilometers across the continent. That's longer than the circumference of the Earth. These roads connected distant cities, remote mountain villages, agricultural terraces, and massive ceremonial centers. The system became known as Qhapaq Ñan, meaning the Great Royal Road. But here's what makes it truly fascinating. The Inca civilization did not widely use a wheel for transportation. They had no wheel carts, no wagons, no vehicles rolling along these highways. Instead, their roads were designed for human runners and pack animals. Messengers known as Chuzki ran across the empire carrying information. These runners could travel incredible distances in a single day. How? Because the road network included relay stations placed every few kilometers. A runner would arrive at a station, pass the message to the next messenger, and the relay would continue. In this way, messages could travel across the empire faster than many communication systems in Europe at the same time. But the real challenge wasn't communication. It was geography. The Andes Mountains are one of the most difficult environments on Earth. Steep cliffs, frozen peaks, deep valleys, unstable slopes. Yet somehow the Inca engineers carved roads directly into mountainsides. In some places the paths were cut into solid rock. In others they were supported by stone retaining walls rising hundreds of meters above the valley floor. And when rivers blocked the path, the Inca built suspension bridges made from woven plant fibers. One of the most famous examples still exists today, the Qhapaq Bridge. This bridge stretches across a deep canyon using nothing but braided grass ropes. Every year, local communities rebuild it using the same techniques their ancestors used hundreds of years ago. Imagine the courage it must have taken to cross one of these bridges centuries ago. Below you, a roaring river. Above you, towering cliffs. And beneath your feet, a bridge made entirely from woven fibers. Yet these bridges were essential. They connected the entire empire. And because the Inca relied on runners rather than wheeled vehicles, their roads didn't need to be wide. Many were narrow mountain paths, but they were incredibly well engineered. Drainage channels prevented flooding. Stone paving prevented erosion. Steps were carved directly into steep slopes. And resting stations allowed travelers to recover during long journeys. But the Inca were not the only civilization building roads before the wheel became common. Across the world, another ancient culture created a transportation network that would influence civilizations for thousands of years. In the ancient lands of Persia, a powerful ruler decided that controlling an empire required something more than armies. It required communication. Fast communication. That ruler was Darius I, the great king of the Achaemenid Empire, and his solution was revolutionary. He ordered the construction of one of the earliest long-distance road systems in recorded history, the legendary Royal Road. Stretching over 2,500 kilometers, the Royal Road connected the empire's major cities. Merchants, soldiers, and royal couriers used the road to travel across vast distances. Relay stations allowed messengers to move information rapidly between regions. According to the ancient historian Herodotus, royal couriers could deliver messages across the empire with incredible speed. His famous words described their dedication. Neither snow nor rain, nor heat nor gloom of night stays these couriers from the swift completion of their pointed rounds. Sound familiar? Those words later inspired a motto of the modern postal system. But the Persian road system had something else in common with the Inca roads. Its true power was not just transportation. It was control. Roads allowed rulers to move armies quickly, collect taxes efficiently, spread ideas and culture across vast territories, and connect distant populations into a single functioning empire. Without roads, large civilizations struggle to survive. With roads, they thrive. But here's the truly fascinating part. Some of the earliest road systems in human history existed long before the wheel was widely used for transportation, which raises an important question. If wheels weren't the primary technology driving these networks, what was? The answer reveals something remarkable about ancient societies. Because in the next part of this story, we will explore how ancient engineers designed roads specifically for foot travel, animals, and human endurance, and how these ancient paths became the foundations of global trade, communication, and empire building. If you want to continue uncovering the incredible story behind the world's oldest road networks, make sure to stay with this video, because the next chapter reveals engineering secrets that allowed ancient civilizations to move across mountains and continents without wheels. And once you see how these roads were built, you'll never look at ancient history the same way again. For most of human history, movement was slow. There were no engines, no vehicles, no highways filled with wheels rolling across continents. Travel depended on one simple thing: human endurance. But some ancient civilizations understood something incredibly powerful. If you build the right roads, people can move faster, trade farther, and control larger territories. And the most fascinating example of this idea comes from the ancient Mediterranean world. Because thousands of years ago, a civilization emerged that would transform transportation forever: the Roman Empire. But here's something surprising. Before Roman roads became famous, early road systems already existed across many parts of the world where wheeled transport was rare or limited. In these societies, roads were designed primarily for walking armies, traders, and animals, not wagons. And when the Romans began expanding their power across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East, they realized something crucial. Empires are not built only with armies. They are built with infrastructure. So Roman engineers began constructing one of the most sophisticated road systems the ancient world had ever seen. Over time, they built more than 400,000 kilometers of roads across their empire. About 80,000 kilometers of these roads were carefully paved with stone. One of the most famous examples still exists today: the legendary Appian Way, often called the Queen of Roads. Built in 312 BCE, the Appian Way connected the city of Rome to southern Italy. It allowed Roman soldiers to march quickly across long distances. Merchants transported goods. Messengers delivered information. And perhaps most importantly, the road system unified distant territories into a single functioning empire. But Roman roads were not simply dirt paths. They were engineering masterpieces. First, engineers dug deep trenches. Then they added layers of sand, gravel, and crushed stone. Finally, large stone slabs were placed on top to create a strong surface. The result was incredibly durable. In fact, some Roman roads are still visible after more than 2,000 years. But the Romans had one major advantage that earlier civilizations did not always rely on: the wheel. Carts and wagons could travel across these roads, which meant the Roman system supported both foot travel and wheeled transportation. However, the civilizations we explored earlier, like the Inca Empire, built massive networks without depending on wheels at all. Their roads were optimized for human movement: steps carved into mountains, narrow paths hugging cliffs, suspension bridges connecting deep valleys. These designs would have been impossible for wheeled vehicles, yet they were perfect for runners and pack animals like llamas. This reveals something important about ancient engineering. Roads were not universal designs. They were adapted to the needs of each civilization. In mountainous regions, roads were built for foot traffic. In flat plains, roads supported wagons and carts. And in deserts, roads often followed caravan routes where camels carried goods across vast distances. One of the most famous examples of desert road network connected east and west through trade. This network became known as the Silk Road. Rather than a single road, the Silk Road was a web of trade routes stretching from China across Central Asia to the Mediterranean. Caravans traveled thousands of kilometers carrying silk, spices, precious metals, and ideas. These routes linked distant civilizations together. And although wheeled vehicles were used in some regions, much of the long-distance trade relied on pack animals and foot travel. Camels became the ships of the desert, carrying goods across harsh landscapes where wheeled transport would struggle. Along these routes, merchants built caravanserais, roadside inns where travelers could rest, trade, and exchange information. In many ways, these ancient trade networks became the internet of the ancient world. Ideas spread across continents. Technologies traveled between cultures. Religions expanded beyond their origins, all because people could move along these early road systems. But building roads was not easy. Ancient engineers faced enormous challenges. Rivers blocked their paths. Mountains stood in the way. Dense forests slowed construction. Yet time and time again, civilizations solved these obstacles with remarkable creativity. In some places, they carved tunnels through rock. In others, they built wooden bridges across rivers. And sometimes they even constructed raised stone causeways across wetlands. One of the most fascinating examples of this appears in the ancient civilization of Maya civilization. The Maya built elevated limestone roads known as sakbiab. These roads connected major cities across dense jungle regions. They were often raised above the surrounding terrain, covered with bright white limestone that reflected moonlight, which meant travelers could even navigate them at night. Some of these roads stretched over 100 kilometers, linking important ceremonial centers. And once again, these paths were designed primarily for foot travel, because the wheel, although known in small toys and artifacts, was not widely used for transportation in the region. So instead of designing roads for vehicles, ancient engineers designed them for people, for endurance, for communication, for trade, and for power. But the deeper we look into these ancient networks, the more extraordinary they become, because some of these roads cross environments so extreme that modern highways struggle to exist there today. How did ancient engineers plan routes through mountains thousands of meters high? How did they supply workers in remote regions? And how did these roads change the rise and fall of entire empires? In the next part of this story, we will uncover the hidden engineering secrets that allowed ancient civilizations to build road systems across the most dangerous landscapes on Earth. Secrets that reveal just how advanced these ancient builders truly were. If you're fascinated by the incredible achievements of ancient civilizations, make sure to like the video and subscribe, because the next chapter reveals how these roads were built in places where even modern engineers face enormous challenges. And once you see what ancient builders accomplished, you will realize that the roads beneath our feet today are part of a story that began thousands of years ago. By now, something extraordinary should be becoming clear. Ancient civilizations didn't just build roads. They built lifelines, paths that carried messages, paths that carried food, paths that carried armies, but most importantly, paths that carried ideas. Before we continue uncovering how these ancient highways shaped the world, make sure to subscribe and stay with the channel if you enjoy exploring forgotten engineering wonders of ancient civilizations. Because the deeper we go into the story of ancient roads, the more astonishing they become. To truly understand how revolutionary these road systems were, imagine the world before they existed. Villages were isolated. Trade moved slowly. Messages could take weeks or even months to reach distant cities. Entire regions lived almost independently from one another. But once roads connected them, everything changed. Empires became possible. Trade exploded. Cultures began exchanging knowledge across vast distances. And some civilizations used their road networks not only for movement, but for control. One of the most powerful examples of this comes from the Inca Empire. As we explored earlier, the Inca built a massive road network known as Qhapaq Ñan. But what made this system truly remarkable was not only its size, it was the logistics behind it. The Inca Empire stretched across thousands of kilometers of difficult terrain in the Andes Mountains. Communication across such distances could have been impossible. Yet the Inca solved this challenge with a system that was both simple and brilliant. Relay runners. These messengers, known as chuzki, ran along the road network carrying messages and goods. Each runner would sprint to the next station. There, another runner would take the message and continue the journey. In this way, information could travel across the empire at incredible speeds. Some historians believe messages could move over 240 kilometers in a single day. For a civilization without horses or wheeled transport, this was astonishing. But the runners were only one part of the system. Along the roads were small buildings called tambos. These were roadside stations where travelers could rest. Food, water, and supplies were stored there. Soldiers could sleep. Messengers could recover before continuing their journey. Entire supply chains moved along these roads, which meant the empire could mobilize resources across vast territories. But building roads across mountains required extraordinary engineering. Imagine carving stairways into cliffs thousands of meters high. Imagine building retaining walls strong enough to prevent landslides. Imagine constructing bridges that could survive strong winds and earthquakes. The Inca engineers mastered all of these challenges. In many places, their roads were cut directly into solid rock. Stone steps climbed steep mountain slopes. And in dangerous areas, ropes and suspension bridges allowed travelers to cross deep canyons. One famous example is the incredible Qhapaq Bridge. Made entirely from woven plant fibers, this bridge stretches across a deep canyon high in the Andes. Every year, local communities rebuild it using the same traditional techniques used by their ancestors. This tradition has continued for centuries, which means the engineering knowledge behind these ancient roads has survived into the modern world. But the Inca were not alone in mastering difficult landscapes. Across the ancient world, civilizations adapted their road systems to the environments they lived in. In dense tropical forests, roads had to be elevated above the wet ground. In deserts, roads followed water sources and oasis routes. And in mountainous regions, roads were designed to follow natural ridges and passes. One fascinating example comes from the Maya civilization. The Maya built raised limestone roads known as Sacbiab. These roads connected cities hidden deep within the jungles of Mesoamerica. What made them unique was their bright white surface. They were constructed using crushed limestone. This gave them a reflective surface that could glow under moonlight, which meant travelers could navigate the roads even at night. Imagine walking through a dense jungle under stars, following a glowing white road stretching toward the horizon. These roads linked major Maya cities together. They allowed rulers to control trade routes, pilgrims to travel between ceremonial centers, and merchants to move goods through the jungle. But beyond transportation and communication, ancient roads served another purpose. They shaped economies. Where roads existed, markets grew, cities expanded, trade flourished. Where roads disappeared, isolation returned, which is why the rise and fall of many civilizations is closely connected to their infrastructure. When roads were maintained, empires thrived. When roads collapsed, communication failed, trade slowed, and the power of distant rulers began to fade. But perhaps the most fascinating mystery about ancient roads is not how they were built. It's how they connected the world. Because some of these early networks eventually evolved into the great trade routes that linked entire continents. Routes that carried silk from the east, gold from the south, spices from tropical lands, and knowledge from scholars across distant civilizations. In the next part of this story, we will explore how ancient road systems became the foundation for global trade networks. Networks that allowed ideas, religions, technologies, and cultures to travel across the ancient world. And once you see how these roads connected civilizations thousands of years ago, you will realize that our modern highways are simply the latest chapter in a story that began long before the wheel became common. If you're enjoying uncovering the hidden engineering brilliance of ancient civilizations, make sure to subscribe and stay with this journey, because the next chapter reveals how these ancient paths transformed local civilizations into interconnected global networks, and the discoveries waiting there might change the way you see history forever. By now, the story of ancient roads is revealing something extraordinary. These were not simple dirt paths. They were the arteries of civilization, paths that carried traders, soldiers, messengers, pilgrims, and explorers across enormous distances. But the most fascinating transformation happened when these ancient road systems began connecting not just cities, but entire civilizations. Before we continue exploring how these ancient paths reshaped the world, take a moment to subscribe and stay with the channel if you enjoy uncovering hidden engineering achievements from the ancient world, because the next part of this story reveals something incredible. Ancient roads didn't just connect places, they connected cultures. across Asia, Europe, and the Middle East, a vast network of trade routes slowly developed over centuries. These routes later became known collectively as the Silk Road. But despite the name, the Silk Road was not a single road. It was a complex web of caravan routes stretching thousands of kilometers, from the ancient cities of China, across the deserts of Central Asia, through the mountains of Hindu Kush, and all the way to the Mediterranean world. For centuries, traders traveled these routes carrying goods that would transform economies: silk from China, spices from India, gold from Africa, glassware from the Roman world. But what made these journeys possible were the ancient road systems and caravan trails that guided travelers across extremely dangerous landscapes. Many of these routes crossed deserts where temperatures could become deadly. Others passed through mountain ranges where storms and avalanches threatened travelers. Yet caravans continued moving across these paths year after year. Camel caravans became the backbone of long-distance desert trade. A single caravan could include hundreds of camels loaded with valuable goods, traveling slowly across endless sand dunes, following routes that had been used for generations. Along these paths, traders built resting points known as caravanserais. These were fortified roadside inns where travelers could rest, eat, and protect their goods. Imagine arriving at one of these caravanserais after weeks of travel, the sun setting behind desert hills, camels resting after a long journey, merchants from distant lands sharing stories and exchanging goods. These roadside stations became hubs of cultural exchange. Languages mixed, ideas spread, religions traveled across continents, and slowly, the ancient world became more connected than ever before. One of the most powerful examples of this cultural exchange was the spread of Buddhism. Originally emerging in India, Buddhist teaching spread across Asia through traders and travelers moving along Silk Road routes. Monks followed the same roads used by merchants, establishing temples and monasteries along the way. Within centuries, Buddhism had spread across large parts of East and Central Asia, all because ancient roads allowed people and ideas to move. But roads didn't only spread religion and trade. They also spread technology. Paper-making techniques traveled west from China. New agricultural crops moved between regions. Even scientific knowledge began spreading between cultures connected by these routes. In many ways, the Silk Road became the first global information network. But maintaining these roads required constant effort. Caravan routes had to be protected from bandits. Bridges needed repairs. Mountain passes had to be cleared after landslides. Empires that controlled these roads often became incredibly wealthy, because whoever controlled the roads controlled trade, and whoever controlled trade controlled power. This is why many ancient rulers invested enormous resources into building and protecting transportation networks. From the mountain roads of the Inca Empire, to the trade highways of the Roman Empire, to the caravan routes of Central Asia, roads shaped the rise of civilizations. But there is still one final mystery waiting to be explored. Because even today, archaeologists continue discovering ancient roads hidden beneath forests, deserts, and modern cities. Some of these paths are thousands of years old, yet they still reveal the incredible intelligence and planning of ancient engineers. Which leads us to one final question. If ancient civilizations could build such vast transportation systems without relying heavily on wheels, what does that reveal about their ingenuity? And what lesson can modern societies learn from these forgotten networks? In the final part of this story, we will uncover the true legacy of ancient road systems, how they shaped the development of civilizations, how many modern highways still follow these ancient paths, and why the story of roads is actually the story of human connection itself. If you're fascinated by the incredible achievements of ancient engineers and civilizations, make sure to subscribe and stay with the channel, because the final chapter reveals how these ancient paths changed the course of human history forever. For thousands of years, humanity has walked the same question. How do we connect distant places? How do we move people, goods, and knowledge across the world? Long before engines, long before railways, and long before the massive highways that now cross continents, ancient civilizations answered this question with something surprisingly simple. Roads. But not just any roads. Carefully planned networks that stretched across mountains, deserts, forests, and valleys. Paths that allowed empires to grow far beyond what seemed possible. Paths that transformed isolated villages into connected civilizations. And the most remarkable part of this story is that many of these roads were built before the wheel became widely used for transportation. Think about that for a moment. Engineers carving paths across cliffs, workers hauling stones through mountain passes, messengers running hundreds of kilometers through dangerous terrain, all to create a system that would allow entire societies to function as one connected world. One of the most astonishing examples remains a massive road network of the Inca Empire. Their legendary road system, the Qhapaq Ñan, stretched more than 40,000 kilometers across the rugged Andes Mountains. Yet wheeled vehicles were almost completely absent from Inca transportation. Instead, the empire relied on human runners, llamas, and carefully engineered footpaths. And somehow, it worked. Messages could move faster than many ancient horse-based systems. Armies could travel across enormous distances. Trade flowed between regions separated by mountains and valleys. This reveals something extraordinary about ancient engineering. Technology does not always require complexity. Sometimes the most powerful systems are built from simple ideas executed perfectly. A well-designed path, a network of relay runners, bridges connecting impossible gaps, rest stations supporting travelers. Together, these elements created a transportation system that rivaled the infrastructure of many later civilizations. But the Inca were not the only masters of road building. Across the ancient Mediterranean, the powerful Roman Empire developed another legendary network. Roman engineers constructed over 400,000 kilometers of roads, including tens of thousands of kilometers paved with stone. These roads connected the heart of the empire in Rome with distant provinces across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Some of these roads still exist today, which means modern travelers sometimes walk on paths built more than 2,000 years ago. Meanwhile, across the jungles of Mesoamerica, the Maya civilization built their glowing limestone causeways known as Sacbiab. These elevated roads connected cities hidden deep within the jungle, and under moonlight, their bright surfaces could guide travelers through the darkness. Across deserts and mountains, another network slowly formed that would change global trade forever. The vast route of the Silk Road. This network allowed goods, ideas, religions, and technologies to travel between distant civilizations, from China to the Mediterranean world, from India to Central Asia, from desert caravan routes to mountain passes. These ancient paths created the first true international exchange network in human history. But here's the most fascinating realization. Many of the modern highways we use today follow the same routes first carved by ancient civilizations. Modern engineers often discovered that ancient builders had already chosen the best possible paths through difficult landscapes. Mountain passes, river crossings, natural corridors through forests. Ancient road builders had already solved these geographic puzzles thousands of years earlier, which means when we travel today, we are often following the footsteps of people who lived thousands of years before us. Merchants, pilgrims, messengers, explorers, all walking the same routes that eventually shaped the modern world. And that may be the greatest legacy of ancient road systems. They did not simply connect cities. They connected humanity. They allowed cultures to meet, ideas to spread, technologies to travel. Without these roads, many of the world's greatest civilizations might never have interacted with one another, and the history of our planet would look very different. So the next time you travel along a highway, or follow a path through a mountain valley, remember something remarkable. You may be walking along a route first imagined by engineers who lived thousands of years ago, people who built roads not for machines, but for human determination. Before we finish, if you enjoy uncovering incredible mysteries and forgotten achievements of ancient civilizations, make sure to subscribe and join this journey. Because the deeper we explore history, the more we discover that ancient societies were far more advanced than we often imagine. And there are still countless hidden stories waiting beneath the surface of our world. So stay curious, stay exploring, and I'll see you in the next journey into the mysteries of ancient civilizations. Rock it!